Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 4 finale of The Boys. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, I thought it was interesting, like, they had to include that disclaimer at the top of the episode. It's like, the timing was just kind of awful with just everything going on recently in the real world and stuff. So, but I mean, you know, it makes sense because obviously it's like, right, don't agree with what happened, regardless of how you feel about Trump or whatever. So it's like, yeah, the timing is it. And I'm not going to put that on The Boys. There are plenty of like political thrillers and movies and TV shows that have revolved around the same plot of like, you know, so it's not like, oh, The Boys just unfortunately happened to be on and airing at the time this all happened. Obviously, this was filmed way in advance. It's just like, I don't know, that just, I mean, once again, the whole like art imitates life, and you know, it gets more and more like life is imitating art in a lot of ways. But whatever the case may be, obviously it didn't even go down full. Well, I was like, no, to be fair, it's like it plays out kind of exactly the same, and it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that to the extent. But either way, so I thought it was interesting. They are just a little fun bit at the top was they are canning and taking a tax write-off. Obviously shots at, well, it's not just them. Other people have done the same thing, but like Warner Brothers Discovery is the one that's kind of caught shit for it the most, because they've kind of done it the most. But either way, the A-Train movie, Training A-Train, isn't coming out. And at first I was like, oh, why are they taking a tax write-off for that? It's like, oh, right, because A-Train betrayed the Seven, and so like they're pulling his movies. Like, we're not even putting that in theaters. And Adam is like, oh, help like release the Bork cut again. So I don't know if that's also supposed to be like a wink and nod to like how everything, well, because there's still the Ayer cut with the Suicide Squad. That's still kind of a thing, but then there's also the director cuts that Zack Snyder has for his Rebel Moon movies. So I wonder, maybe I'm reading too much into that. I don't know. First and foremost, our boy Homelander is spiraling more and more. What really set him off this episode was he found that picture of Butcher, Becca together in Ryan's bag, and that set him off. He destroyed the room, blasted a hole through the wall, burned the fly, like he destroyed the room, and just that look in just his eyes are just like, come here now. It's like, regardless of how you feel about it, I am your father, and that will never change. And in that moment, Ryan is legitimately scared of his dad being like, come here, kind of, don't you turn your back on me. Homelander, I mean, and I think that speaks volumes. Not like it's better or anything, but Homelander could have forced Ryan to come back, but despite him being the douchey person that he is, that really it's not even about Ryan, it's more about him. He wants to be loved, and it's like, oh, all I do is give love to people, and no one loves me in return, because he's so narcissistic and egotistical that he can't, like, take his own head out of his own ass to recognize like how fearful people are of him. And it's like, you're my son, you would never have anything to be afraid of. But it's like, he doesn't realize he's been so caught up with his coup that he hasn't really taken time to be there for his son, even though he was making these promises of like, oh, I won't manipulate you, I won't do this and that, what was done to me. It's like, sadly, the cycle has continued. His need to be loved has taken precedent over trying to actually be there for the, I mean, and what do you really expect from Homelander? Every time it seems like there's even a monochrome of, oh, you're growing, it won't change anything, you're still a piece of shit, but there's a monochrome of growth, he takes like 5 steps backwards. So Ryan eventually goes and meets with Butcher, who's kind of resigned himself to death, you know? And it's just like, I'm not going to give in to you, Joe. I just want to die. Like, this is kind of the end of my fight. Even telling Huey, you know, he told him that story. He's like, yeah, there's this place that I wanted to go with Lenny, a place in Nevada where it's basically like a topless ribeye place. And he's like, yeah, like Lenny thought it was the funniest thing ever. And he's like, I always wanted to take my little brother there, but never could. And he's just like asking Huey, who is like the closest thing to Lenny for him. It's like, I need you to like go there for us, you know? Because like I said, he's just like, he's like the things that, you know, that come to mind when you're nearing the end. And just that whole situation with Ryan, obviously telling Ryan like, right, I'm kaput. I wish I had more time, but I don't. Because Grace wants to kind of force the situation because like Ryan is there Hail Mary. We'll get to the rest of everything else beforehand, but it's like he's their Hail Mary. He always has been. He's always been their back pocket solution ever since season 2's finale. Like, he's always meant to be that. He's always been geared up that way, but no one has ever told him that's kind of one of his main purposes, sadly. And Butcher doesn't want to rush to that. He just wants to get, like, I want you to feel safe. And it's like, if you can honestly tell me you feel safe with Homelander right now, then go right ahead. And so it's like, I love that. And if someone said that recently, of just like, Ryan constantly goes back and forth. You don't know which way that kid's going to go. Because some episodes makes you go like, no, the kid's going to be on the good side. Other times you're like, man, kid's taking after his dad. That nature versus nurture thing, even though, like, it's like, how much of what is Homelander and his dysfunction and his psychosis, like, how much is that passed on to Ryan? Because despite having a mother in his life, he still did grow up in a similar environment. Like, it was the illusion. The thing is, Homelander always knew what his situation was versus Ryan, who lived in a compound, but it was the illusion of, a normal life. So that will F a kid up. Being responsible for your mom's death, despite everyone else saying it, you still feel your own guilt of, yeah, I killed my mom. So that, plus everything your dad's been whispering in your ear and molding you towards, and everything Butcher said, it's a culmination of everything that's playing into, are people good by default? How much does nurture play a role in it versus nature? So a lot of that is complex and compounded upon this character, and he's a kid, and it's kind of that Avatar, that last Airbender thing of, right, so much is put on the shoulders of like a 12, 13-year-old kid, and it's like, what do you do? I mean, you can make the arguments like, well, isn't that shonen protagonist 101? Sure, but and he just, it's like, which way of the pendulum are you going to swing? And I just love that he continues to be, even at the end of this, he's still a massive question mark. Oh, there was something I also wanted to bring up at the top, but I forgot to, and I just want to go ahead and include it here. It's interesting if you look at Prime Video with going back to the real world of it all. Sorry, but it's like, I forgot what the actual title of this episode is, but it does revolve around the context of the episode. If you've noticed, I don't know if this is something they're going to change later after some time, but like the title for this episode just says the season 4 finale. So I was like, they probably, with the context of like the episode, and they probably don't want that title floating out there right now. I mean, it's out there because it was already known, but I think for the purpose of just like what's happened recently, it's like, let's kind of remove that title for now. We'll put it back later. I don't know if anyone else saw that. I thought that was so interesting. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I said, I think like it definitely has the word president in it. And I can't remember the other words in it, but it's, like I said, it's in correlation with the attempt on Singer's life. So, and obviously that ends up being the big thing too. Is like Singer gets, they're trying to like, I don't know the electoral vote situation. I understand it to some extent, but also don't in other aspects. So I'm not knowledgeable in them. But obviously they cut back and forth. I'm sure there's supposed to be parallels. I didn't follow the news enough during the whole January 6th situation, because I don't know if that was something that was, because I know there was like the debate about like, the votes and stuff like that. I don't think they really covered that in this episode, but like, I don't know if that ended up being an issue in like Parliament or whatever, of just like, whether like that was supposed to be like a real life thing of like, no, that exact same thing happened in real life when it came to like the votes and stuff. I don't know. Either way. Circling over to Homelander really quickly, because of the whole Ryan thing, once again, he's spiraling more and more. When he's on TV, he ends up outing Victoria live on television. It's like, no, she's a soup, and she's like, well, thanks for complimenting me, and he lasers her on live television. It's like, yep, she's a soup. It's kind of a good thing. You're out there and open now. This is a good thing. You don't have to hide anymore. The fact of the matter is, when it comes down to Singer, you'll be in a position to be president. It's all going to be good. It's all going to be kosher. But the problem is, like, Vicky does bring up the whole aspect of, what are you going to do when literally half, not only Vought, but also the entire country is going to be divided, which, regardless of how you feel about the pendulum, like, this country has been divided more so than it's ever been. Maybe the argument could be the world, but, obviously the more direct parallel is the U.S., around U.S. politics and stuff. But either way, he was like, right, I've thought about that. And he hadn't really given it much thought because he hasn't been following Sage's plan. Maybe she had plans for that. Who knows? She had the, I don't know if Homelander ever looked at the book she left. Because he's like, right, we're not going by Sage's plan anymore. So I'm wondering, did he actually ever read her book, or did he, because she purposely left it, and I thought the point was for him to read it and try to like do everything that's in there, playing into her plan even more, which we'll talk about later. So I don't know how much of that was Homelander freestyling. It seemed like it was him freestyling, but it could have just been him freestyling with what she'd already laid the groundwork for in that notebook, but maybe he never bothered reading it. No, because it's like, it's in his room, so I think he did read it, because like the last place she left it was at the in the tower, specifically like in the meeting room. So the fact is it was in Homelander's room makes me go like, oh no, he definitely was like not fully freestyling it. He was going by her standards, and it just kind of never really fully worked out. So they put together a list of all the people that need to be taken out. And Ashley's overhearing the fact that, well, she had to be the one to compile the list, and then Deep suggested, hey, why don't we put Ashley on the list? I even love that he spells her name wrong. I mean, you know, there's multiple ways to spell Ashley, but hers is E-Y. He put double E's. I even love he was like, does anyone know Ashley's last name? And at that moment, everyone kind of pauses because, like, I don't think that's ever come up in the show what her actual last name is, because, like, it's also playing to the fact is no one knows jack shit about her, except for little tidbits Ashley's dropped here and there. Like, we know her mom died when she was 17 of cancer. That, you know, it's little tidbits we got here and there, like last season and over the course of the show, you know, about her, like, lack of going to the doctor over the past couple years, yeast infections and all that stuff. So, except for little things like that, we don't really know anything about Ashley. So she's panicking. So it's like, interesting. I mean, understandably, because they're trying to kill her. I thought it was so interesting that she rushed to inject herself with the V. So God knows what power she's going to end up getting. The fact is, like, obviously she was convulsing, her wig fell off. What immediately came to my mind is, like, is she going to have hair powers? Because I was kind of thinking, like, is she going to have powers like Medusa from the Inhumans? Because, like, her power is, like, growing her hair and being able to kind of control it like tentacles. I was curious if that's going to be the case. I was almost wondering if it's going to be like an inverse of that, if they went down that route. Her power might be something else entirely. But I'd almost wondered if it would be like an inverse of Medusa. Like, just specifically like the Inhumans TV show. Medusa doesn't have her powers for most of the show. Like 99% of the show, because her hair gets shaved, so she's got a butt. So it almost seemed like, I'm like, are they doing an inverse of that to some extent? Like, she is going to grow back her hair, but she's going to have... It feels like that's meant to be. We also never got an answer to also, like, a big thing too. Why were there so many missing compound Vs? And the fact is, like, Homelander never said anything about it. Not like, does he not check that drawer? Like, why? Like, once again, there's very specific ones missing, so people were wondering, like, did he do that on purpose to see if anyone would take the V? Because it's like, oh, I have a very specific way I go about this, not unless someone else has secretly been taking the V from him and he's just completely blissfully unaware. But it's like, we never got an answer to that, so I'm like, what is that about? So that's going to be interesting. They never found Ashley, so she most likely bounced. I don't know if she ended up going away, like, is she going to end up running into A-Train next season or something? Like, I'm curious to see what Ashley's story is. Poor also Ashley, she got killed even though she wasn't on the list. I love Firecracker being like, oh, instead of running, she's like, fuck this, and just shot the dude. Then we had, I think it's Evan. I always get it backwards on who's who amongst Seth and Evan, the guy. I was like, oh, that's interesting. One of you died on screen, the other one didn't. And I love the Deep being like, oh, like, I mean, because he's kind of going through it, you know, thinking about all the stuff with him and Ambrosius, and it's like all that pain, because he was like looking at his book earlier in the episode, at some one point in the episode, and so he ends up killing. Like I said, I think it's Evan, and it's because it's like, all right, tell me you respect me. I'm one of the smartest people. He's like, no, you're just saying that for the sake of staying alive. He's like, no, I really mean it. He's like, no, you're not. You don't really mean it, but I'm okay with that. It's all good. And then proceeds to punch a hole in his head. It's like, Jesus. Then Black Noir got a murder boner, so despite everything, violence not being his thing, well, now new Noir 2.0, is now becoming a lot more like old Noir. I mean, we're basing that on what the Deep said, but I mean, it's unclear whether or not I mean, Black Noir did some fucked shit, but like, I don't know if he got a boner from it, but maybe Deep was correct in that capacity. Whatever the case may be. So, but I think it's interesting that Malcolm Barrett's character, like I said, I think he's Seth, is still alive. I think it's so interesting that one of you got, but not the other. It's kind of almost like the Ashleys. One Ashley was supposed to die, not the other one. So that's interesting. So I wonder who's going to be the new Ashley replacement. Well, because also Ashley was supposed to be the Ashley replacement, I'm sure, but that kind of didn't pan out. So there's also this thing, and I'm reading way too deeply into it. I just think it's interesting. Malcolm Barrett's character got killed at spoilers in Preacher. I think his character dies in the comics as well, but his character dies in the season 3 finale, which is the second to last season of the show. Just think that's kind of interesting. And now, like, his character ends up potentially, not unless he had an off-screen death, but I feel like they would have made a point of it. Like, he's not seen dying on screen, so I get the feeling like he's still alive. The reason why I'm bringing that up, if you don't know, Garth Ennis also wrote the Preacher comic. That, he also wrote the Boys comic. So it's like, I just think there's an interesting parallel there. Was that on purpose? No, I just think that's like a funny, like, correlation I just drew. I'm not saying the show planned that. I just thought that was interesting. So that's all. Some other angles to the episode. We had Huey getting proposed to by Annie, or Shifter Annie, which I love if you have the subtitles on. The moment she talks, the subtitle says Shifter Andy, which I thought that was interesting. But yeah, she proposes to Huey. I guess it is kind of effed. It's like, I guess you want to keep him complacent, but it's like, you kind of went above and beyond, but I guess it's like, right, once you're playing the role of someone, the shifter gets really, really into the role. So I'd almost wondered if the ring he used would, like, because someone had thrown this out there, and I actually didn't even think about the parallel of, like, how shifters shift in Supernatural. It's not, this is the more bloodier version of it, but it's exactly the same thing. It's like, basically, you rip off the skin, you shed your skin. And someone had thrown that out there. It's like, oh man, I can't believe I didn't think about, like, that exact parallel of shifters from Supernatural. But, like, the thing is, someone had brought up, like, oh yeah, like, they're weak to silver. The moment Hugh was going to go for the ring, I'm like, are they going to, like, nod to that by, like, having the ring, like, mess with her skin or something like that? But it didn't happen. Granted, her skin started degrading because it, eventually it doesn't last forever. That's why her skin was looking the way it was, and when they ran into her last episode when she was hiding in the shifter was hiding in the closet, it's because that might have been the latest form that they took, and it was already starting to peel at that point. So I wonder what's the max amount of time. And the shifter has to go back and re-up every once in a while. Has to, like, touch you and to kind of re-up as the skin's falling apart. So it's Annie versus Annie, and kind of plays into a lot of Annie's insecurities, talking about, like, oh, you want to, saying a lot of stuff that Firecracker was saying, like, right, you want to pretend like you're better than everyone else, but essentially kind of very nihilistic perspective on, like, everyone sucks. Like, no one's good. Like, you might be, like, want to think you're better than everyone else, that you're more morally good or whatever, but the fact of the matter is you don't even really know who you are, dealing with your literal identity crisis. Like, the fact is you can't even get it up. Your powers aren't working in this moment. You're stuck here. Oh, yeah, I fucked your boyfriend and I proposed to him. Oh, yeah, that story about your great-grandfather or grandfather, yeah, I told that to him. It's just, like, all kinds of fucked and just using everything against Annie. She's been kind of struggling with probably ever since season 3's finale, but obviously it's been there over the entire season, struggling between being Starlight, being Annie. That's something that's been there the entire time, and that's just grown and grown until it's literally manifested as a psychological thing of her not being able to, literally get it up and not being able to use her powers. So, oh yeah, they also did butt stuff. And it's like, yeah, and Huey puts it later on, it's like, well, apparently Starlight was gone for 10 days, and they did it at least, he's like, no less than 20 times. It's like, understandable why she'd be pissed, but we'll get to that. That brutal, it's always the brutal thing when people are getting out of cuffs and stuff, like squeezing, and you're like literally tearing the flesh off your hands when you're like trying to squeeze them through the cuffs, and it's just like, ugh. So there's that. I referenced earlier, Firecracker, her situation is getting worse. Like, well, we all knew it would. I'm surprised she didn't drop dead at the end of this season. A lot of people were so certain that she was going to die this season, and nope, she's still alive. She's definitely dead next season, because like that heart situation is getting worse and worse. And I love that like she prepared the breast milk for Homelander. He's looking at her like, cilantro, and she's like, ha ha ha. And then she's coughing during the meet, and he's like, all right, scoot down. And he's like, further. And it's just a thing of no matter what, kind of a constant reminder for her who he really is. She wants to be so important to him that she is looking past his flaws. Him ripping Web Weaver in half last episode, she still was willing to offer her breast to him last episode. So no matter what, she's going to overlook anything. Him treating her like shit. I mean, there's also this psychological thing of kind of like, probably like, sadly she feels like she deserves it, because it's kind of like a, oh yeah, like people kind of treat me like shit, but you're so special, so I'm standing next to a god, like of course, like whatever he needs of me, like even if he treats me like shit, I still love him. It's a very like abusive relationship, like mentally and emotionally in that capacity. So that's how I'm reading into it. Like, I think just a lot of, I mean, to be fair, like Firecracker has a lot of insecurities, and so she found the leg up she needed to get like Homelander. That's all she wants. She wants to be there for him. She wants to have a purpose. The irony behind like, oh, she's trying to rally people who don't have a purpose, and lo and behold, she was someone that was kind of a little waiting in the water. She was, what's the word I'm looking for? Waiting might be the word, but I'm treading water. And now it's like she found a lifeboat, but that lifeboat isn't the grand glamorous solution she thought it'd be. It's a band-aid, but she's still willing to stick with it and just be fine with it. Frenchie is working on the virus, but to no prevail. He's not able to kind of get it done fast enough, so they have to go underground while Frenchie continues working on the virus. Kimiko, Starlight, and Huey all have to go underground with Singer. And it's there where Huey realizes Annie's not Annie, when she uses the term like, oh my god, it's like a furnace in here, and he puts it together with the last episode. Then he thinks about all the like little things about Annie, and he's like, holy shit, Annie's not Annie. And he tries to break that news to and it's just like, nah, we're good, we're great. And then she's like, yeah, see, he proposed, well, rather I proposed. And it's like, oh, that's great. And Huey's like, yeah, I did that. We did that, you know. And then she reveals herself. So she is straight up bulletproof. She's also super strong and very skillful, kind of going a little Black Widow-ish, kind of just the way she like systematically killed people. That poor bastard. It kind of was a little bit Omni-Man-ish when he, in the season 1 finale, when he pushed that guy, literally half his body like slid across like the table in the kitchen or whatever. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit, except the guy's body didn't split in half. Instead, it just like his body broke. I was like, that's effing gnarly. I was like, that's rough. One person, she pushed him into like the coat hanger. Another person got clubbed in the head. So I love the slow door situation. It was being extremely, extremely slow. I was like, oh boy. Luckily, no one got crushed, but I was kind of concerned on some level. But it's just like how really, really slow, comedically slow that door was to open it, well, that vault door of sorts. And Kimiko's going up against Annie, but gets her neck snapped. And then the real Annie shows up and proceeds to kick the doppelganger's ass. And it's like, yes, I might not know who I am, but right now I'm the person kicking your ass. And I was like, I had to think about it. I was like, that's only the second person Annie's ever had to kill. I mean, it is also a little traumatizing killing yourself. There's that. But it's like, yeah, Annie she's only killed one person in the entire show that I'm aware of. She has less bodies on her than Huey does. Because my entire thing was like, oh yeah, Huey's only killed like, what, 4 people now, sadly including his dad. But I was thinking about something recently, and I was like, he actually has more bodies on his end, because there was at least, he's up to maybe 5, because I've completely forgot there's the people he shoots in the season finale. Doesn't he kills like 1 or 2 of them, when he's spraying when they're going to rescue Kimiko, he's like, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, so Huey's only killed like 5 people, which that's part of the conversation later on where Huey's like, yeah, like I used to, you know, be traumatized by the fact that I killed someone, and now it's like I don't even blink at it anymore. Specifically thinking about like episode 4, how like he killed that shining light person and it didn't even phase him. So because someone had brought that up of like, oh, like Huey's drop body. It's like, yeah, but it's still a thing. They were like, oh, it's making it still a moment. It's like, well, it's making a moment because in that moment he's realizing like, fuck, I'm not affected by this. So it kind of adds extra context to that. But I've also brought up, unlike everyone on this team, like with the exception, I mean, we don't know how many bodies MM's ever dropped. We don't know. We know Frenchie's dropped a lot. We know Kimiko's dropped a lot. We've seen quite a few of the people Kimiko's killed, but that's like not even counting all the stuff she did at Shining Light. But like, Annie's the only person on this squad who has less bodies, has less blood on her hands than Huey does. So, once again, I can understand Annie being pissed about Huey. It is the thing of like, yeah, it was a shapeshifter that had my memories. It's still like, yeah, you should have picked up on like there was something off, because eventually Huey did piece it together. Like there's certain certain. Oh God, I always struggle with this word because here I am trying to be using big fancy words. Eccentricities. I'm still butchering the word, but you get what I'm trying to say. There's certain aspects and habits that it's like, right. It's like you didn't wear sweatpants. You also wore the suit, and then like the dress. There was something about the dress, and I think like you normally go braless or something like that. I forgot what Huey was saying, but it's like those little things. He's like, that's all what compounded upon the fact is that I figured out that Annie wasn't my Annie. But it's still the thing of you didn't know, you slept with her, you proposed to her, and it's like, he's like, well, to be fair, like the sex was initiated by her all the times. And it's like, yeah, I even had that freckle down, you know. So it's like, man, no matter what it's understandable. It's still the thing of, I was kidnapped. I was held hostage for 10 days and you didn't even know I was going. It's like, to be fair, she was that good at pretending to be you. I mean, she has all your memories and everything. She's willing to forgive him because she's like, all right, you're going to get tested for every venereal. Like, last thing I'm going to get is shift or syphilis, which I love Huey being like, yeah, fuck yeah, Huey, fuck yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, good. Me and Annie are good. She's still probably going to be pissed at me for this for a while, but still. I do love the Frenchie and Kimiko of it all because, okay, with everything going on, the attempt on Singer's life failing, Newman being like, yo, like trying to talk to Homelander about how this is all failing, this is going to blow up in their face, because it's like, yo, he's going to send people after me, he's going to strike him now that he's still alive, and then the fact is that he... God, what was it? Oh yeah, like now that like they're gonna bury him even deeper, like they're gonna hide him, and we're not gonna know where to go for him. But now it's like he's coming after me, and essentially the same thing he was saying to Ryan, but a more extreme version of kind of button up your shit and just kind of get it done, do it. The fact of the matter, he's like, if you fail at this, I will basically like make sure Zoe knows pain for the rest of her life. I will basically be sending pieces of her to you for the rest of your life. And you're like, fuck, dude. And in that moment, like Newman's world gets rocked, you know, in that moment. So when it's all said and done, she calls up Huey and she's like, yeah, I'm done. It's like, it is ironic to be done now. Huey reached out to you literally last episode and you still went along with everything. But now it's just like, now you're backed into even more of a corner that you're like, I'm sorry, like, I'm just doing what I can to survive. She's like, fact of the matter is, you don't think I don't know about like the virus you're sending my way? And it's like, oh, so you got in contact with Samir, which makes me wonder where's Samir, right? I mean, he's probably in hiding. Vicky probably hid him because it's like he knows how to make the virus, so the last thing you want is him out there, and you don't want the boys being able to track him down again, so probably like hid him pretty well. With the context of everything later on for Zoe, that is like Samir's not there, makes me go like, right, he's so in hiding that he can't surface. But does beg the question about Stan. Like, we don't know what Newman did with him, and he's probably like staying hidden too because Homelander finds out where he is. Like, he's as good as dead. At least prison, he was safe, and Homelander probably was fine with him being in prison because it's like, oh, I know exactly where you are. I feel so much delight knowing that, but you out and about's a different thing, so we'll see in the long run what that might mean. But she was the one that's suggesting that they get Newman on their side, that like they work with her, because she's like, right, I would tell you where Zoe is. That should be proof enough. Like, yeah, you don't know whether to trust me or not, mutually assured destruction type of situation. But at the end of the day, you need to trust me on this, because I'm letting you know where my daughter is, the most important thing to me in this world. Reason why she's doing a lot of what she's doing, despite having her own reasons for it, she does in her own way want to make the world a better place for her daughter. And it's like, yeah, my daughter's going to be in danger from Homelander, so that's why I gave her V in the first place, but still Homelander could still hurt her, so let's not. So Huey has to convince the rest of the team, and he talks about the fact is of how like violence is never, it's like that's always our solution. Our solution has continued to be murder. Like, that's not good. Like, it doesn't really solve anything. He's like, yes, it's crazy as shit to like find another way, but it is braver that way. And he's like, it can be crazy, but it's still brave in its own way, because like basically choosing the murder route is kind of the easy thing. And even then, has that really been a good enough solution for us with everything? You know, he's talking about forgiveness. You know, he's like forgiving A-Train, forgiving his mom, and he's like letting go of a lot of that hate has kind of been better for him. It's helped him heal, and that's been an important lesson for Kimiko and Frenchie. It's like, right, we got to learn how to forgive ourselves. Like, we take it, you know, day by day. Because it's like, yeah, the Newman thing is like, yeah, that's a little easier than our own situations. But it's like, and Kimiko admitting, like, I do have feelings for you. I pushed you away with the whole Colin thing because I thought like you needed to be with someone that was better than me. But he was like, Moncourt. I'm saying Moncourt, like, no one's better than you. And they kiss. And it's not just like a one-sided, obviously it's like, she kisses him and he kisses her back. And I even love that she told Annie, she's like, what? And she's just gonna, like, don't say anything. Don't make a big deal of it. So at the same time, this is all happening. We cut back to the Ryan, Grace, and Butcher thing, and they tell him, well, more so Grace than anything, tells him everything. Like, yeah, that plane from season 1, yeah, that was Homelander. Oh, also, he raped your mom. So it's kind of like, once again, throwing all the trauma, all the pain of like, well, he never knew, like, he knew his dad could be bad, but he had, like a lot of people, he's blind to a lot of his father's, you know, monstrosities that he's committed. And it's like, hey, he's killed a lot of people, and also finding out, oh, cool, nice way to just spring that on, like, oh, cool, like, it wasn't an affair, which is sad that he thought that. I mean, it's understandable. Like, it makes you wonder, when did Ryan tell that story? When did Homelander probably told him that story, like, in between season 3 and 4, about, like, oh, like, you know, I had an affair, like, I mean, you know, me and your mom was such a big fan of mine, yada, yada, yada. I wonder how he spun that. But now finding out, like, oh, you're a product of rape, it's like, oh, God. Especially now you're kind of like, oh, my mom, like, had to deal with, like, I don't know how much of that he's really processing, because there's so much shit getting thrown his way, and it's like, well, there's still something else. We need you to be strong enough to fight your dad. And he's like, whoa, you want me to be a weapon against my dad? I got to get out of here. I'm not going to go to my dad. I'll be back. I just need some air. But Grace is like, I can't let you go. So kind of playing into what Kessler, Butcher, however you want to phrase it, wanted from the beginning, and it's like, we're going to lock you in here. But even he's like, you're going to do the exact same thing to me that happened to my dad, and you saw the end results there. But Grace is like, the fact is, you filled a hole in my heart. After losing my grandchildren, I had a hole in my heart, but you filled that. I love you, kiddo, so I just need you to stay here. And he's like, please move. And even Butcher's like, Grace, like, don't do this. And before she could reach for the button, Ryan pushes her, and she breaks her neck against the wall. You're like, fuck! And Ryan looks, and he's just kind of like, you see a little bit of that numbness in his eyes, because it's kind of like, I don't want to be caged up like an animal. I'm sorry what happened. But he's not even like heartbroken. Like, the last time we saw him heartbroken was the Coy situation. So when he killed him and he felt like so broken up about it, he doesn't feel anything in this moment, just because it's like, well, I had to do it, because if I didn't do it, like, she was going to like cage me up. And kind of looking at Butcher and seeing Butcher's disappointment in his eyes, it's a lot. He never went back to his dad, so he's got a lot to think about. And then just Butcher staring at Grace's dead body, and he kind of gives the nod to Kessler, So Butcher comes back looking peppier than ever, looking good. When the conversation then becomes like, well, is he actually dying anymore? Or is Kessler feeling like, is he basically a walking corpse at this point in time? Or is it Kessler being like, oh, I was making you sick for the purposes of wearing you down, and now that you're okay, now that you've given in to me, now that your psyche's been worn down, now that you've given me the nod, it's time, like, because he does look much healthier when we see him later on, so who knows, like, how that whole situation works, whether or not Butcher is still dying anymore. So he shows up. I was like, how is this going to play out? And he's like, no deals, and proceeds to fucking murder Newman. Some people had her on their bingo card of who was going to die this episode. I was like, I wasn't expecting it to be Butcher that kills her and ripping her in half. It legitimately makes you kind of sad because it's like, for one, it's like, damn, like, I mean, of course, there's no way they're going to let you have a powerful soup like her on deck. Granted. I don't know, once again, I don't know how much people know about her being really a bloodbender. Obviously, Marie and the others are, like, from Godolkin are, like, trapped somewhere. So we still have one bloodbender out there. Like I said, there's always a possibility her sister could end up being a bloodbender too. But once again, my notions of like this season also changed my idea. Like, oh, I guess powers don't work the way I thought they did. So, like when it comes like the family members, like I would assume once again because I thought if Huey had his powers the way they were with Temp V, I thought his dad would have gotten the same abilities. You know, so but they're in the same ballpark, but they're not the exact same abilities. Just look at Newman and Zoe. Granted, because I thought Zoe was adopted. That was my misunderstanding the entire time. But either way, so power situation doesn't flow the way it is. So even Marie's sister, even if she got V, would not have the same powers as her. Not guaranteed. There's probably a good chance of it. But either way, that's sad as shit. It's kind of a bummer because it's like, oh man, that means Claudia's not going to be in this show next season, the final season. Because like, I mean, it's like you're having like one of the most powerful soups out there. Like, could you really just leave her out and about? And it's like sad too, considering like Marie's kind of on her own now, finding out, you know, it's like, oh, Newman's dead, and so it's sad. And how does it end with Huey covered in blood? Because of course it does. And it's like he's the one that convinced Newman to come in. And I mean, she kind of made this decision on her own, but it's still kind of sad because he cares about Newman. They were friends. There is legitimately a good bond there. And now it's like she's dead, and it's just like that sucks. Especially because now Zoe's an orphan, you know. And as we see at the end, she ends up at the Red River Institute. Though, like, she never wanted that life for her daughter. And ironically enough, her daughter has that life. It's like, oh, that's sad. Because especially what the Red River Institute means and does for people, you know? And especially, like, the whole element of, right, that's something Vicky and Marie bonded over, like, her being in the Red River Institute. So that's why I was thinking, that's why I was bringing up earlier, too. Like, I was literally about to call him Gus. Because, like, everyone calls Giancarlo Esposito Gus. Yeah, Edgar, like, that's why I was like, the Edgar and Samir thing, like, they must be so hidden that they haven't come to get Zoe yet. She's definitely, there was a storyline in Supernatural that never got resolved. Someone can correct me on this, but I don't think it ever got resolved. Dean killed someone's mom because she was a monster, and he let the kid live, and the kid's like, I will find you and I will kill you. That never came about to my recollection. I mean, spoilers, Dean dies anyway at the end of the series, but still. That never got resolved. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a setup for that where like Zoe's going to get her get back next season against Butcher. It's like, you are the one that murdered my mom. She might have beef with the rest of the boys too, being like, yeah, you put my mom in a situation to get murked. So she might put a lot of the blame on Huey, but who knows. But Butcher walks away with the virus. We also finally, and I figured it's like, right, they've been setting it up all season. And how does it look when it comes out of Butcher? Straight out of his chest, tentacles and all. So, I mean, he was able to pull Newman apart. I mean, she's invulnerable in some cases, but it's like, well, I'd assume the same thing would be for Homelander. But I guess, like, Homelander would have a little bit more defense. I also think it's interesting if you notice he covers Victoria's eyes because she does have to. You could just sense it and stuff like that, but it's still the thing of. I think her in particular, she still needs to look at you to be able to kind of focus her power, to kind of give her like a place to kind of like visually look at to kind of like she can sense the blood and stuff, but like I think she does still need her eyes. So I think it's kind of interesting to think about one of the first things he did was cover her eyes. But it's like, oh, that's once again just sad. And now it's like people had kind of theorized like the boys would be splintered at the end of this because everything went super sideways. The fact is, Victoria's dead, and she was their weapon against Homelander and stuff, and help take down Vought. Butcher's like running rampant with his powers and stuff, so he's no longer there. So Homelander's kind of hurt about the news until Sage shows up and it's like, yeah, our plan worked. And the whole thing was like, well, like, what was her plan? Like, what's her grand plan in all this? Her grand plan was just to like, oh, I did it to see if I could fucking do it, and I did it. Hell yeah. I was like, wow, you were just as much of a sociopath? I mean, it's understandable, but you thought there was some greater plan of like, oh, I don't want Homelander to have his power. It's like, no, I'm fine playing puppeteer from the shadows. I just wanted to see if I was smart enough to do it. So I was like, oh, I did this. I'm like, now that's interesting. Sage is obviously still alive too, so moving into phase 2 of her plan, she even admits like everything that's happened so far was meant to happen. Newman was never going to be that person. That's kind of sad that Newman's just a piece on the board too. Now, did she account? Like she even said like, yeah, there were some curveballs, but for the most part, I adapted. I kept some stuff to myself because you were you and you would have fucked everything up. So yeah. All of this was for the purposes of cool Singer that the because even the what was her face, the Shifter, they said that Annie wasn't even the initial target, which I was like, who was supposed to be the initial person? But it's the thing of, well, to be fair, what did Sage say last episode? Like, right, he was the A-Train was the perfect misinformation avenue, so it was easy to, so you set that up. Like, I wonder, was it actually supposed to be someone else amongst the boys? Was it going to be Huey? I actually kind of wonder, was it going to be Huey or was it going to be Butcher that was actually supposed to be the original target, but Annie just happened to be, just things happen to work out that way? I kind of get the feeling like, if anything, it feels like it probably would have been Huey. It's like, oh, like, his dad recently died. He's been anti-vault. Like, there's stuff there where I'm like, feels like that could have easily been Huey. Maybe that was kind of the point. Because the Shifter did go out of their way to, like, slash Huey when he was trying to stop, you know? But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that. Like, I wonder who else the target, who was it supposed to be originally then? But it's just, you know, once again, Sage pivots the plan, and so it all kind of worked out. It's like caught the recording of Singer saying he was going to try and have Newman killed. So now he's arrested for that, and you're just like, oh god, it's like it was going to be in self-defense because she was trying to kill him the entire time. But it's like, yeah, they're able to spin this narrative of like, nah, he literally had plans to kill us VP, and now he's arrested. Now Callahan, the senator dude. Kind of interesting how that all plays out. Like, he's kind of, you know, next in line succession-wise. So now he's taking up the mantle, and now he wants Homelander to be his, like, direct contact. So Sage is like, cool, going forward, make sure you listen to me. Like, this all went according to plan, buddy. Like, let's move into phase 2. Let's get ready for, yeah, this is just the beginning, which is kind of scary. So there's that. And Homelander, now in the powerful position he's in, is kind of dictating almost like a police state situation. They're going to be heroes out there. The fact of the matter is, even more so than Newman, because Newman was still too much of an issue that, as Sage put it, like, she would have gotten her own ideas and stuff, so she was never going to be the perfect, like, person to take over. So Callahan will kowtow to anything that Homelander is. Like, Homelander's even more president now than he would have been with Newman. So he has even more sway and control. So, and he's able to be like, yeah, my dear friend Victoria, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And so when it's all said and done, like, yeah, all the Starlighters need to be on watch because, like, you know, there's going to be so many heroes out there. You know, heroes are going to, I mean, it's everything coming full circle too, because they wanted, this is also the same senator they tried to use to get heroes in the military, and now it's all coming out like, oh, the U.S. is entering a police state. Obviously, there's a division in the country because of, like, the decisions that are made, and this is just going to incite even more craziness. It's sad, and the boys end up going their separate ways, and everyone gets got by the squads. Kimiko and Frenchie got by Sam and Kay. Ooh, nice little tease there, which now begs the question. I'd assume we're getting Gen V season 2, because I know that they were obviously before Chance's, untimely passing, they were going to start filming around that time. So I don't know if they've even started production, because I'm sure they have to rewrite a lot. Because I don't think I think I remember hearing that they're not recasting Andre. So I'm sure they're gonna have to write him out, and I don't know if they're gonna introduce a new character to kind of fill that void or what. So a lot of that. So I'd assume Gen V season 2 would come out before this, before the 5th and final season of this. But yeah, they showed up so that's interesting. And grabbed Frenchie, which I'm curious to see what they're going to do with Frenchie. I mean, just like the Samir thing, Frenchie knows how to make the virus, so he is the person why not kill him? Why do you need to keep him? I guess it's kind of the thing of you need an enemy, so you're going to create a terrorist, and I think Frenchie's supposed to fill that role. And obviously Kimiko speaks for the first time, crying out no, which some people had theorized, with everything, especially learning the truth about her words, it'd be something happened to Frenchie. Some people theorized Frenchie would die and she would say something. It's no, he's getting carted off. So Mother's Milk got taken out by his favorite person, Love Sausage, which I was at first I was Love Sausage. I was man, I thought last time we saw you, your dick got blackened and you were running away, holding on to it at HeroGasm after Soldier Boy. But then it's well, to be fair, we know that all you have to do is re-inject yourself with V, which now begs the question, is that where some of that V went? Did he inject did he give V to other people that we'll see in the future season, and one of those people being Love Sausage? So that's interesting. And Huey and Starlight get attacked by Cindy, which I was yo, major pull, dude. Because I remember people when the whole Newman thing, when season 3 happened, some people there were some people being are we just gonna move past the Cindy thing? I guess we're just moving past it. It's nope, bringing that back. It's no, don't worry, we're gonna tie up some of these loose ends by the time we get to the end of this. So that's interesting, bringing Cindy into the fold. And Starlight's powers had just kicked back in, so Huey gets taken. Starlight immediately jettisons off, and I was yo, flying higher before. So the boys are even more splintered. Some are captured. I mean, it's even interesting because it is paralleling the whole Godolkin crew too. So I'm I wonder will they end up in the same facility? The Godolkin crew has their purposes. They're kind of the boogeyman, just like the boys have been putting out in the form of the boogeyman. So where this all takes is going to be interesting. We're obviously not done. Butcher and his dark passenger, which I'm I cannot believe I didn't think to make that parallel. I was listening to someone who had recently made that comparison of referring to Joe as Butcher's dark passenger. I was yes, if you've never seen Dexter, that's what Dexter called his evil, the instinct inside of him to kill would be his dark passenger. So it makes I mean, it's a combination of his dark passenger plus his dad, Dexter. Obviously that changes in the continuation series New Blood, but you know. So anyway, so that's interesting to see Butcher on his own and see what he does on his own. And I also like that too, because hopefully that means going forward. It's actually interesting because another show sets up their final season with a similar thing, and I don't want to spoil a certain show that has a similar thing with a character kind of being a different character, stuff is going on in their brain. It's oh, this person was never real. They're a physical they're a mental manifestation of kind of your darker side. So it makes me wonder I was wondering will we see this person anytime on screen in season going into its 5th and final season, and that might narrow down what show I'm referencing. But this show in particular, will we see Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Joe, from time to time with Butcher? Is there any more of Butcher left, or will this we probably won't see Kessler, just to hammer home the point they're not two separate people anymore. We'll see. I hope we do get more Joe, but it's gonna be interesting to see what Butcher does. And then finally, the tease at the end where Homelander finds his dad, because he never knew. So it's right, it was kept secret from him. And now that Grace is gone, and now that they're in a more political power position like Callahan is, he found out a big, deep, dark secret, and that is Soldier Boy, which obviously Homelander, it's like, well, my relationship with my son is kind of going sideways, but I still have my father. Granted, your father is disappointed in you, but now it's like you're closer to, you're basically the president, so who knows if that'll change things. But like, once again, that looking for love, that's still instilled inside of him. So, but your dad is also an anti-soup weapon. So how do you contend with that? Especially because Soldier Boy's been labeled as kind of a traitor and issue too. So how do you circumvent that if you bring him back? Is like, are you just going to keep him in the capsule the entire time? A lot of questions. It's definitely going to be really, really interesting to see where the final season takes us with all this. Like I said, in conjunction with, I don't know where the state of the other stuff is because, like I said, Gen V, I'm not sure. There's also going to be another spinoff. What was it? The Boys Mexico. I think that's still in development. I don't know how far along that is. Like, it's not. I don't think it's at a production phase. I think it's just still in the development phase. So who knows what's going to happen on that front. So I'm fascinated, so excited to see where the hell the fifth and final season is going to take us. Like I said, we'll probably get some stuff in between, like a Gen V season 2 and what that will set up and where that story goes. I'm already excited about, but what that means for the larger world of the boys in general, with everything going on, because that will serve as like a season 4.5 and what that will set up for the fifth and final season. Yeah. Obviously, we got to end this on a Homelander versus Butcher situation, but what that final duel and that final battle looks like, what everything leading up to that is going to be, who's going to make it out of this series alive, who's going to, like, are the Butcher's definitely got to go, Homelander's got to go, but like, you know, is Deep going to get it? Is New Noir going to get it? Firecracker, I don't see her making it through she might make it through the entire final season and then croak by the end. What about Sage? A lot of, like, you know, once again, what about Ashley? You know, what about her? What about A-Train? What about Maeve? Because the only two people who know that Maeve is alive, one of them is dead. It's Annika. She's dead, so she's one of the only people that knows that. And Ashley, who's in the wind. So I could see, well, also, like, the boys in general know. Well, we know at least Annie and I think Annie and Huey know. I'm sure Annie told everyone about, like, Maeve, not unless that was, like, a secret she got. But once again, it's still very few people. But Vault-related, the only people that know, one is dead and the other one's in the wind. So I don't see that coming up. But it still could be a possibility that Maeve comes back into the picture. So can A-Train, with just the world turning into what it is and just, you know, the world without the boys. They're going to need some boys adjacent people to help. So I'm also curious to see, like, what's going to happen with, like, maybe we'll get more of Huey's mom too, because, like, at first that was a thing of, like, everyone had that thing of, yeah, Huey's mom seems suspicious, we know she works for Vitality, but it's like, will we find out she's actually a bigger role in things than we think, or what? Like, what's going to happen on the parent front? Like, well, Starlight and Annie and her mom aren't in a good position, regardless, but, like, Huey and his mom is, so she finds out about Huey. I don't know. There's a lot that can be covered, and I'm so curious to see what they do with all of this in the fifth and final season. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.